So as a kid, growing up, did you think you were going to play professional basketball?
100% yes.
Okay.
I knew in third grade we had to do a project on anyone, and we had to like go to the library and like get a biography on someone. And I grabbed the book on Lisa Leslie, and I was third grade, so it was very simple. But when I read the book about Lisa Leslie, it was instant that I knew I wanted to play for the LA Sparks and I wanted to go to the WNBA. So that kind of started me wanting to be a WNBA player.
And is that your first, like, a memory associated with the WNBA? Like the first thing?
100%. I don't even think I knew what the WNBA was in third grade, but when I saw Lisa Leslie, I was like, oh, I want to be her. I want to do what she's doing. And that's why I always was a fan of the LA Sparks growing up, because of Lisa Leslie.
And not to put you on the spot, but what year were you in third grade?
2003 to...
Okay.
Yeah, 2003, 2004.
Okay. So why did Lisa Leslie kind of open that world for you? What was it about her that made you feel like you could be like her?
I think it was like when I was reading it, it was just like something about like obviously the way like she looked, and it was just kind of talking about her story and that she was on the road. I think her mom was like a semi-truck driver and, you know, kind of got into sports a certain way. So I think it was just her story. And I'm not gonna lie, when I saw the LA Sparks with the color purple, I think that my favorite color is purple, and it always has been. So I think I was just kind of drawn to it in general. And then as I read the book and learned more about her, it was like, why wouldn't I want to be her, right? And she was really tall, I was really tall, and they talked about how she stood out compared to her like classmates in school, and maybe was picked on because she was so tall, and that I was the biggest kid in my grade, you know, most of the time as a kid. So I think just some of the things that I learned about her, I felt like I was maybe there. And then from her that I learned about Tina Thompson, and I remember like seeing her with the lipstick on, and it was just like some of those little things that really stood out to me, and I was just like, oh, like how could I not want to be like these women?
Yeah. Is that the first time in your life that you felt that type of representation and like someone who looked like you and made you feel like you could be exactly like they were?
Yeah, it was the first time because my dad played basketball, so I wanted to be my dad, right? Like I wanted to be like him. And then so that was the first time I saw a woman that I wanted to be like and really felt like that's who I want to be. Like I literally wanted to be Lisa Leslie, and then I wanted to be Tina Thompson. And then as I got older, I wanted to be Candace Parker, right? So I think anytime I saw women that were doing a sport that I love, that I was passionate about, but they were also like really tall, right? They stood out a little bit, and it was like a way that you can make what makes you different. And you know, where people might say something about how tall you are or how big you are, that it was a really positive thing. And so as I kept going through sports and through basketball, it was always something that to me, the drive was always there, and that kind of connection, because, you know, I got to look up to women that were in my shoes at one point.
Yeah. And when you think back on the league back then, both on and off the court, what was the identity of this league from your perspective?
I can honestly say, I don't know if I thought of it as a whole. I just knew it's what I wanted to do. Like, I just thought it was so cool that people could go out there and so many people would be cheering them on, and, you know, they could go out and, I can't even say like the specific plays they would make, but I just thought it was so cool that they got to run out on the court and people are cheering and clapping literally for them playing a game. And I was like, oh, I want to be out there, right? Like, I want someone to be cheering for me. So I just thought, just kind of, and obviously the league has grown so much since then, but as a kid, it was on a huge scale to me, and just seeing that there was people that could go out there and their job was to play basketball and people cheered for them just to do their job, I thought was awesome.
Yeah. So I kind of want to make a transition to your time in the league. Can you kind of set the scene for us of like what your first years in the W looked like?
Yeah, especially coming from UConn, the first years, it was a bit of a, I won't say reality check, but kind of just a different perspective. You know, I think the league obviously is a big deal, and you have this dream your whole life of getting drafted, and then you go to, not in Connecticut, because I think we always had good fan support, but like I remember our first road game in San Antonio at the time, there was like no one there. It was like totally an empty stadium. We were playing where the Spurs play, and to me it was like, this is so different, because I'm used to so many people at the games or sellout games, and just it feeling like a bigger deal. Right. So I would say very early on, it was like we knew it was the best league and the competition was through the roof. But I think it was kind of a downside of like, no one's here, right? Yeah. No one's watching us. No one cares that we're even out here playing, except in Connecticut, I think was a little bit of an outlier. And then I think as the years went, and especially as we got toward the end of my kind of short career, I think you started to see, you know, more games on TV, more people caring about it. So it was in a short time you saw this like kind of quick pickup in the growth. But I think comparing it to college, it was definitely hard to see the difference in how much people cared about it kind of from the outside.
Yeah. What were y'all's biggest priorities as athletes at that time? Like when you first stepped into the league?
I'll say the biggest priority is you wanted to play. Like, I think the focus was definitely more of like your on the court performance, right? And I think it's still there, but like when you get drafted, it's really like you want to play and you want to find a way to make the playoffs. When I came to Connecticut Sun, we weren't making the playoffs. We weren't good. We lost a lot of games, but so it was like, all right, how do we win more games and how do we get to the playoffs and hopefully get a championship? I think I didn't really think about much off the court, honestly. It was like, how do I maximize my time in the league? I want to go overseas, I want to play, I want to make money, but it was really about how am I going to further my career on the court.
And going back to like not a lot of fans being in the stands, like did you ever feel like you were carrying the weight of like the continuation of this league on your shoulders in that way?
I would say at the time, no. I don't think we really thought about it that way. I think this kind of notion around the league growing and continuing, I don't think it was as big of a focus. You know, I think it was just kind of like, all right, this is how it is, and this is just how it is, and that's it. You know, I don't think we spoke a lot about it, but I think as we kind of moved on a little bit, I think, especially when we got toward the bubble season, where there was this kind of notions of like, what's bigger than basketball, I think that was a little bit more of like the weight was like, obviously we're playing a game and we're out there to win games, but how are we bringing light to maybe issues or certain things that maybe people don't want to talk about or overlook? So I think that became a little bit more of the weight versus, you know, how are we helping it to grow and sustain as a league?
Yeah. So having played for the Sun for the majority of your career, did you interact with our alumni like Taj, McWilliams-Franklin, Nikisha Sales, and Asia Jones a lot, or were you aware of just how big they were to this franchise at all?
So there wasn't honestly a ton of overlap. I mean, obviously Taj, because she's with the league, right? So she'd be around. So I think she's the one we had the most interaction with. Asia Jones, I grew up watching her. She played at UConn, so she was someone that I had always looked at. And when I went to UConn, people always said they reminded me of her as well. So I always kind of paid a little bit more attention to how she played and things like that. And Nikisha Sales, again, was at UConn and kind of to me like an OG, right? Like a legend at UConn. So I got to know her a little bit more through that. And I think as I've been with the Sun a little more and I've kind of learned more about the alum that have been here and I realized how many alum had been here and how good they are and where they kind of went to, I think some of the connections came a little bit later. Wish they came a little sooner, but I think that's just some of the progress with the league, right? Of making sure that there is a connection with the former WNBA players and kind of the ones that set the stage and to more of the modern player.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring it back to that feeling of representation that you had back in the day. And now with your current role as GM, you're in the process of creating that representation for, you know, young athletes, specifically young Black women who can just see how far basketball can take them now. Is there a sense of pride in that?
I mean, there always is. Like, I think it's weird to think about it sometimes in that way because I just think of it's just me. Like, I'm just a normal person, like, honestly. And I feel like I've worked hard and I've been in the right situations. I've been supported in the right way that have helped me get to the point that I am now. So I really feel like if I can get there, I don't see why anyone else can, right? Like I really don't think there's something so different that I've done or that I did to be able to get there. But I do think it helps, especially with, you know, obviously athletes, right? They're focused on playing, and that's how I was. I focused on playing. But I think when you get to the point where you have to retire, it was a lot tougher to be than what I thought it would be. So I think the thing I'm the most proud of is it's showing like, okay, you know, the glory days aren't always over when you're done playing, right? You can still have a really good career and you can transition into a role that maybe, you know, there might not be a ton of us in them, but you can, right? You can be an athlete and excel and play at the highest level, but then you can also go into a different role and still be successful. So, you know, I think that's what makes me really proud, and especially for Black women or Black girls that, you know, they might love sports, but, you know, even if they're not going to go play in college or play as a professional, like you can still be connected to the game in a professional way. And, you know, you don't have to maybe look a certain way. You don't have to be a certain age. You don't have to have those maybe stereotypical things to still get in those type of roles.
That's awesome. And my last question for you is, would you consider what you're doing now in creating this representation a labor of love?
I would consider it because we work hard, right? Like we have to put a lot of effort into what we're doing and we spend a lot of time. But I think it's definitely worth it, obviously for myself and for the organization, but also for, you know, like we mentioned, the representation that you create. And even other women that I've looked up to or that are in professional roles. You know, I think the biggest thing is, you know, when you get the opportunity, right, you take it, but you have to kill it, right? You have to do a good job. You have to make sure that you're excelling. And so I think it's always going to be a labor of love, because I think we have a little bit of that pressure on ourselves that we have to exceed, right? We have to do well because we want to keep creating the space for other people that maybe look like that look like us to be able to get to those same spaces. So it's always going to be a labor of love, but in the best way possible.